We are going to be doing the exclusive seller brokerage agreement updated 7/1/2024. This is a form that you use when you have a listing with a client. It's the exclusive seller brokerage engagement agreement. For this example, I'm using the office address as my address, and just kind of some of it's being made up. So you put the address of the property in here, the city, the county, the zip code, and then the tax partial ID number, which you can find in Realist or in tax records. We'll have the ID number. Every partial has an ID number, like we all have social security numbers. Legal description. I typically get my legal descriptions from one of our alliance partners ahead of time. If I know I have a listing coming up, I'll have them pull it, as well as if your sellers have a copy of their deed, that is actually the legal description. So if you can get a copy from them, that's great to have it, and then you just mark attach as an exhibit here too. It could also be the same as described in deed book, blank page blank. However, note that on tax records, these are not always accurate. I tend to not use that one unless it's something that maybe happened in the last year or two, but even then, I'm hesitant. Land lots, you can also have that if you have all that information, but it's important to make sure that you have the right one so that you're not selling the wrong partial. And then describe property as a condo, information here if it is a condominium. You're going to put the price in which a property shall be listed for sale. Now, let's be honest, some of us get our listing agreements fairly far in advance, especially if renovations are going to happen. So that's kind of a ballpark number. I always let my sellers know that that number can be adjusted upward or downward if needed, and if so, we can do an amendment to this document. I put the commencement date of the agreement, so it is the date that I think we're going to hopefully go to market, or actually, the commencement date of the agreement would be today. And this agreement shall commence and be effective upon being signing below. And then ending date of agreement, that is, however many months. I typically do minimum of 3 months, but usually 6 months is pretty more accurate. And with the current conditions in the market, I think that would be an excellent choice, 6 months from the date. Marketing, I'm going to put showing where I'm going to market the listing. I'm going to put FMLS, Georgia MLS, and KWLS. You don't need to put Realtor.com, Zillow, and all those other things because these guys already feed to those sites. So don't worry about that. Here's an important thing though: delivery of agreement to and listing with MLS. This agreement may be timely delivered to and listed with the above referenced multiple listing services in accordance with the rules of such multiple listing services. This obligation shall control over any conflicting or inconsistent language contained herein. Marketing commencement date. So that is coming soon. Usually coming soon is kind of that, or actually going on the market. You're going to have a date. This shall be the date when the property is first marketed to the public. Seller shall have the right upon notice to broker to move this date up or back by no more than X amount of days. I always put 30 days. You could even do 60 if it's a large renovation project, because we know that sometimes contractors don't work in the timeline in which we want them to. Then we're going to go here to compensation, which is the big change on this form. Generally, compensation to brokers is negotiable, is not set by law. That's always been on this document. However, this does not obligate individual licensees and brokerage firms to necessarily negotiate their compensation. So again, you can just offer it, or you can explain to your seller that they can offer it to the buyer's agent, or they can have the buyer's agent try to negotiate as part of the contract. Compensation to seller's broker. Seller agrees to pay the seller's broker the following compensation at the closing of any contract to sell, as that term is hereinafter defined, of the property as follows. This is actually wrong here when I was typing it. I'm going to put in here, so this is a seller of mine who was kind enough to say, you know what, I think it's important to compensate the buyer's broker, so yes, I'm going to pay 6%. So we're going to put in 6% there, compensation to seller's broker. Now remember, that doesn't mean you as a listing agent is getting 6% because you as the agent never directly get any of the money. It always goes to the brokerage. And then the brokerage divvies up what's going to you and what's going to the buyer's agent. Optional compensation to buyer's broker. Seller hereby approves the following compensation, if any, being paid to the buyer's broker by either seller, in addition to the compensation paid by the seller's broker out of the compensation being paid to the seller's broker, or seller and seller's broker as set forth in other section below. I am going to, on this one, put seller's broker out of the compensation being paid to the seller's broker. So the 3% is going to go to the buyer's agent, and that is out of the 6% that they're already paying to the seller's broker. If seller's offer of compensation to the buyer's broker is conditions, specify the conditions here. That's where some people might say, if I show your client the property, you're only getting 1% commission as the buyer's agent, or whatever other things they come up with. That is your discretion. Separate compensation on lease. For this purposes, I put NA because we're not doing lease. But this is in case you have a listing maybe that doesn't sell, and instead the seller is going to hold on to the property for a while and put it on the market as a rental. So this is where you would negotiate that. So if you know that's a potential, you obviously want to do that ahead of time. Typically, the compensation is 1 month's rent for that. So just know that to fill that in. Protected period, length of protected period of the term shall be, in this case, I had 30 days. I usually actually do 60 now, but that is up to you. Agency and brokerage. The following types of agency relationships not offered by the broker. Remember, we offer all, and we can do dual agency. However, you do need to have permission from our managing broker, who is currently Melba Franklin. If the broker offers dual agency as one of the agency relationships, seller does or does not consent to broker acting in. That's a conversation you have with your seller. In this case, I'm going to put does for this example. Lead-based paint disclosure. This is also kind of having this in here now. I believe I don't remember this in the previous one, but I could be wrong. Lead-based paint disclosure, it just basically says a dwelling on the property or a portion thereof was constructed prior to 1978. And then so either you mark yes it was or no it wasn't. We're going to use no in this example. This is the seller has the following special circumstances that will require third-party approval before seller can do the following. Bankruptcy, divorce, you need a copy of the divorce decree, bankruptcy, of course, bank information, and who the contact of the bank is for that, and all the same with the short sale. Seller not untitled. This can usually be an estate scenario, often, other, whatever that might be. You'll fill that out. But typically, most of us aren't using any of these. I would say of all of these that come up most often, it is the divorce and just showing that, a copy of the divorce decree is required by the closing attorney so they know how the funds are to be distributed. So that's important. Negotiations, seller does or does not authorize the broker to assist to the extent requested by the seller in negotiating the terms of and filling out a pre-printed form contracts for sales review and approval. So I typically say the seller does. My sellers usually want me to do that for them. And then this is all just the regular boilerplate legalese stuff that we really have no say in. And then you're just going to go down to the bottom here again. Of course, there are some, different pamphlets you can do. Lead-based pamphlet, if that is a lead-based house. Mold pamphlet, I don't often give out unless it's a moldy house. Protect yourself when you're selling real property, though. That's a great brochure, actually, to give to your clients because it does remind them to put things away. Firearms, jewelry, anything of great value, which is also a conversation I have with them. I don't know why those are marked. I don't typically have any exhibit with the exception of the legal description if I have that already. And the lead-based paint exhibit, which will also be part of the exhibit for any contract coming in. Any special stipulations that are in here, they can be all sorts of different things. I'm not even going to go down the list for you. And then the seller, you're going to have them sign there. And then the broker information here, which is you, the listing agent, will sign there. And that is it on the listing agreement. Hope that helped.